So you've probably noticed a little limitation to working with session data because what we can store is either an integer or a string. But what if we want to store an object or, maybe we want to store a different data type? What you can do is you can actually convert it into a string by serializing the object. So we can serialize the object into a JSON variable, and we can store that as a string. And then when we retrieve it, it's going to be kind of the JSON string that we're retrieving. And to get it back into the object format, we have to deserialize it. So this is a little extra work because we've got to serialize and deserialize, but it works pretty slick. So in order to serialize and deserialize, we do need to include using system.text.json. Okay, and then adding the code to serialize the objects before saving them. Typically, this is going to be in the controller. If the object is tied to a model, probably a good idea to make sure the model state is valid before you do any serializing. But assuming everything is okay, you're going to create a string variable, and then that is going to store the serialized object. So it's JSON serializer.serialize, and then you give it the object name. Once you've got that string variable, then you can use http context.session.setString. You can use the key with that variable name to then store it as session data. So here is a little example from the book. So team is a class. We're creating a new team object. A very simple class. We just got an ID and a name. We're storing that, calling it team. And then we are using JSON serialize to take our team object and convert it into a string. Then we take this JSON string, okay, and we use http context.session.setString. The key is team and the string is JSON. That's what we're calling. Another example, so this is back to our in the bag app that we've been working with. It's similar. We're going to actually be creating a new class called wishes. Then we're going to create a object and populate it with values, store it as my wishes. We then use JSON serializer.serialize, and we give it my wishes, and it returns a string. So we save the string, and then we use http context.session.setString to store it as session data. And then we go to the view. We don't have to pass anything to the view, okay, because it's session data and the view is going to have access to it. So in the view, what we have to do is we have to deserialize the strings. And so at the top of the view, you're going to have a using statement for system.text.json. And then we're going to use the http context.session.getString. In fact, in the view, it's just context.session.getString. The HTTP is kind of thrown off, removed. And then we give it the variable name. Okay, and then we store this as a string. Okay, so it has retrieved it. Then we use JSON serializer deserialize. We give it the name of the class and the string that we are deserializing, and it converts it into an object which we store. So this little example, you can see that we're using context.session.getString. We're retrieving it with our key. Okay, and then we're storing it. And then we take that stored string and basically we're converting it back into an object here and we are storing it. Now, to access the different properties, it is just the object dot property. And so that is how we are accessing those properties. Now, what if you have a class that has a property that you don't want serialized? In the model, in the class itself, add the data attribute JSON ignore. And then the property that follows it will not be included in the serialization. And in order for this to work, you do have to include a using statement at the top of your class that says using system.text.json.serialization.